Welcome back to our ISO 42001 Masterclass, the global standard for governing AI responsibly, ethically, and safely. In the last episode, we explored Clause 5, where ISO 42001 makes one thing absolutely clear: AI governance succeeds only when leadership takes ownership. Now, in part 3, we move into the central engine of the entire AI management systems. The clause that powers risk management, compliance, lifecycle controls, transparency, impact assessment, and the statement of applicability. This is clause 6, planning. And it's the single most important clause for organization implementing ISO 42001. Because here's the truth: AI is not dangerous because it is powerful. AI is dangerous when we do not understand its risk and impact. Clause 6 forces organizations to answer the hard question: what risks can our AI create? Who could be impacted? Individuals, groups, or society, or all of them? How will we measure AI performance, its drift, its biases, and safety? Do we have a clear AI governance objectives? What controls do we need, and which ones are mandatory? Are we prepared for regulatory obligations and audits? This clause introduces three critical pillars. First, AI risk assessment and risk treatment. A structured way to identify, evaluate, and mitigate risk such as biases, discrimination, hallucination, drift, misuse, cyber security vulnerabilities, explainability gaps, and legal non compliance. The second is AI impact assessment, a unique ISO 42001 requirement focused on the human, ethical, societal, and environmental effect of AI, not just technology or business outcome. Third is AIM's objectives and the statement of applicability. Clear, measurable governance objectives and the master list of controls your organizations commit to. Clause 6 is where your organization moves from AI intentions to AI discipline. From we want to use AI responsibly to here is exactly how we will do it. By the end of this episode, you'll understand how to structure AI risk assessment and impact assessment, how to define measurable AI governance objectives, how to build the statements of applicability, what clause 6 is, or why clause 6 is the backbone of ISO 42001 certification, and how it connects directly to AI lifecycle governance, monitoring, and improvement. So let's begin part 3, where ISO 42001 transforms from a standard into a strategic AI risk and governance blueprint for your organization. Welcome. This is your host, Savit Vittal Salian. Let's start this journey. Clause 6 of ISO 42001: Planning for responsible and safe AI. Well, clause 6 is where AIMS becomes real. It requires organization to understand risk, understand its impact, set objectives, and define how they will manage and monitor these across the entire AI lifecycle. This clause has four powerful sub elements. First is action to address risk and opportunities. Second is AIMS objectives and planning. Third is AI risk assessment and treatment. And fourth is AI impact assessment. Together, they ensure AI is developed and deployed safely, ethically, legally, and responsibly. So, clause 6.1 specifically is addressing risk and opportunity. 6.2 is about AIMS objectives. 6.3 is AI risk assessment and treatment, and 6.4 is AI impact assessment. Let's go into each section. 6.1, that is addressing risk and opportunity. This is where you plan how to identify AI risk, how to manage societal and ethical impacts, how to stay compliant with laws, and how to respond to emerging risks. So, ISO 42001 requires your organization to plan how AI risk will be identified and treated, and how opportunities, which could be innovation, efficiency, or any new capabilities, how are they leveraged. It requires organization to plan how compliance with laws will be ensured. Here it could be EU AI Act or GDPR or DPDP Act or any sectorial regulations. This will require your organization to plan how AIMS aligns with your organization's risk appetite. That's 6.1. Second part is, unlike ISO 27001, which is security focused, ISO 42001 explicitly includes impacts on individuals, groups, and societies. It includes ethical considerations, safety and trustworthiness. It explicitly includes biases, fairness, explainability, and environmental or social effects of AI deployment. The goal is not just risk reduction but responsible risk management. 6.2, AIMS objectives. And here the objective must be measurable, assigned, monitored, and time bound. Some of the KPIs which can come out in this is percentage of AI systems with updated risk assessment, or model drift detection time, or bias reduction score. These are examples. You can build on it. You can add new, and you can go deeper based on your own individual AI models. To understand it deeper, AIMS objectives and plans to achieve them is covered in 6.2. Here you explain to your audience or your stakeholders that ISO 42001 requires measurable AI governance objectives, such as percentage of AI systems with approved risk assessment, percentage reduction in AI incident or bias events, or time to detect and respond to AI model drift. Here you define the percentage of AI systems with explainability documentation, or training completion rates for AI developers and users, and compliance KPIs. So this, the 42000 requires measurable AI governance objectives. Each objective must clarify what is being measured, how it will be achieved, It here is objective. Who owns it? What resources are needed? When the objective will be completed and how progress will be monitored. This section is where most organizations struggle because their objectives are too generic or too broad or simply not measurable. 6.3 is about risk assessment and treatment. At access layer, you assess data risk, you assess model risk, you assess your biases and fairness, you assess ethical and societal risk, you assess your security risk, you assess your third party risk. So when it comes to assessment, 6.3 is the section that you need to refer to. From a treatment option, you do have avoiding, reducing, transferring, or accepting the risk. And finally, statement of applicability is created here. That's 6.3. So 6.3 is the engine room of AIMS. ISO 42001 demands that organizations establish a risk assessment methodology, define risk criteria, demands that organization identify AI specific risk and evaluate those risks, treat them using a structured method, and document everything clearly. So, risk assessment must cover quite a few areas. Let's go through that. So, AI risk assessment must cover data quality, its lineage, poisoning, and privacy aspect. AI risk assessment must cover model risk, which includes accuracy, your robustness aspect, drift, or adversarial attack aspect. AI risk assessment must cover bias, discrimination, and fairness aspect. It should cover any lack of explainability. It should cover safety risk, environmental and societal impact, if any. It should cover automation risk, operational risk like availability, reliability, or misuse. It should cover or must cover third party risks, which constitutes your APIs, models, data sets. It must cover regulatory non compliance, if any. It should cover reputational damage and AI enabled fraud or manipulation, if any. So that's 6.3. The next is risk treatment option, which should include avoiding the risk or mitigating the risk through controls, monitoring, or redesigning, or transferring the risk through contracts or warranties, or accepting the risk with justifications and right approvals. So that's the risk treatment options. Next comes the statement of applicability. So after the risk assessment, the organization must create statement of applicability, which should list Annex A controls to be included, the full one, Annex A controls excluded, justification for each, why included, why excluded, and links to your risk treatment and any associated documentation. Now, this mirrors ISO 27001 but is focused on AI specific governance. 6.4 is AI impact assessment. This is a unique requirement of ISO 42001 because it assesses impacts on individuals, groups, societies, and vulnerable population. You're required to document everything and get the right approvals. Now comes the AI impact assessment 6.4. This is the most unique part of ISO 42001. Unlike risk assessment, which focuses on the organization, AI impact assessment focuses on individuals, communities, vulnerable groups, societies, environment, social norms, ethical expectation. Now, this is one of the strongest differentiator of ISO 42001 compared to other management system standards. So ISO 42001 requires organizations to define a consistent impact assessment methods. It requires organization to evaluate each AI systems for non-financial impact. ISO 42001 requires organization to consider unintended effect. ISO 42001 requires organization to document the entire decision making process, record when, why, and how impacts were assessed, and review impact periodically. Now, this aligns with the EU AI Act and global ethical AI principles. It is one of the strongest differentiator of ISO 42001 compared to other management systems. So, AIA is very similar to DPIA and in GDPR, algorithm impact assessment in Canada, or AI safety and ethical impact assessment in global framework. So AI impact assessment, though comes under ISO 42001, it is very much identical. So if you are aligned to all of the other similar guidelines. Let's look at implementation checklist. How to go about. So you need to start off by defining a repeatable AI risk assessment methodology. Once done, you can define your risk criteria, which includes your likelihood, your consequences, your thresholds, your risk appetite. Then you need to identify AI specific risk across all your models. Once done, you need to document risk assessment for each AI systems. Once done, you need to create a structured AI impact assessment template. And then you need to conduct AI impact assessment for every significant AI use case. You need to then document your impact decisions, mitigations, and approvals. Once done, you need to create a statement of applicability with all Annexure A controls. Once done, you need to define measurable AI management systems objectives. Then assign owners. Define and measure your or assign your KPIs, budgets, and timelines. Once done, you need to establish a periodic review cycle, quarterly or annually, recommended quarterly. And finally, link your risk, its impact, and objectives into a unified governance flow. Pause here. You can take a screenshot if required to, so that you have this very clearly with you when you're putting your strategy. Let's look at from an auditor's lens. What will the auditor inspect? And if you are the one, this is something that you can use as a reference. Starting off with auditor's evidence requirement. First is from a risk methodology evidence. You would ask for documented risk assessment method. What was the criteria? How was it defined? How was the alignment with organizational risk appetite? And AI specific risk categories, are they included? That's the first one. That's risk methodology evidence. The second is risk assessment evidence. Look at AI risk register for all significant systems, model specific risk assessment records, evidence of periodic reassessment, and identification of the risk owner. Has it been done? So these are the evidence that you would need to prepare yourself if you are the implementer. And from an auditor, this is the question that the auditor will approach towards. So that gives you perspective from both the sides, what you need to prepare, and as an auditor, what is that you need to start looking at. Do look at it. These are indicative. This is a start point. You can build on your requirements. The next is risk treatment evidence. Here, you look for risk treatment plans. The auditor will ask for control selections mapped to Annex A and evidence of control implementation. The next is statement of applicability evidence, which is they look at inclusions, exclusions, and their justifications. And they look at linkages to the risk treatment and version control, which is approved by SOA. So the documents, all of these documents that you submit as an evidence would be looked for version control, so that it is confirmed there are no tampering around with the documentation. The next is impact assessment evidence. Here, impact assessment methods would be reviewed. The AI impact assessment report for each AI systems would be reviewed. They look at what considerations impact were assessed from societal and ethical perspective. They look at approval workflows for high impact systems. How does that work? The next is objectives and plan evidence. They look at the SMART aims objectives. They look at KPIs, the timelines, the owners. They look at periodic monitoring records. Are the records kept? When you say you are monitoring, what is that you monitor? How do you monitor? What is the evidence that you have to support it? The next is that impact assessment, has it occurred before deployment or after? This will show your actual plan or actual implementation on ground. Is it before? So it shows that there is a design in place. If it is after, it looks like you have bolted it later. The auditor will verify that AI risk includes ethical, societal, and safety risk. They will verify that SOA matches the real world controls. The auditor will verify that objectives reflects the organization's AI maturity. They will verify that clause 6 aligns to clause 9, which is performance evaluation. We'll look at clause 9 as we move forward. But clause 6 will be linked to clause 9. So that's your checklist. Now the question is how clause 6 is linked to rest of ISO 42001. Well, clause 6 is the strategic brain of the entire ISO 42001 management systems. Clause 6 identifies the risk. It provides resources to manage the risk. It implements risk controls. It monitors risk effectiveness and it improves risk processes. Just have a look into it. Your clause 6 identifies the risk. Clause 7 is about providing resources. That's how the 6 is linked. Clause 8, implementing the control. So on, 9 and 10. So 6 has direct linkage to 7, 8, 9 and 10. I hope this gets a clarity on how clause 6 plays its role. Hope you liked what you have seen, understood the context. Hope this helps you in your planning. With this, we come to the end of this part 6. We will move on to the next clause 7, which is about support. Thanking you for staying with me for so long. Hope this has brought value to the table. This is your host, Savit Vittal Salian. See you in part 4. Namaskar.